Okay, so welcome back. In this video, we're going to continue our series of videos where we talk about how to write software. And generally, we talk about Microsoft Visual Studio, which is a wonderful, what's called integrated development environment that allows you to write software. And we generally focus on C#, but you can use whatever programming language you want. And in this video, we're going to talk about a control that you can use in your user interface, like you see here. And the control we're going to look at in this video is called a PictureBox. And you might maybe be aware of PictureBox, and you might think, well, why do I need a PictureBox? That just displays an image on your user interface. Well, that's true, but if you think outside the box a little bit, you can find some really nice ways to improve your UI and to make it more useful. And what we've got here is an example. We have an application here that we're developing in another series, and that series is showing you how to write the software to simulate a real-world device, which you see here, which is called a relay. And that is used everywhere to measure electrical quantities and perform some action when the quantity gets in a certain range. So this application is using a PictureBox here to make the user interface a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a connection with a external electronic device and start a simulation. And you can see down here, suddenly we have this light going on, which indicates that a device is closed. So you've probably never seen anything like this in Windows Forms in Visual Studio. And that's because this is an image that we are loading when we hit the start button. Now what I've done is I have changed the current that this device is measuring, and it's timing out. And what we can see suddenly, now we have the open light because the device is now simulated as being open. So to make this happen with these changing indicator lights, all I did was use a PictureBox, and I made externally 3 images to represent the 3 states, both off, one on, and then the other on. So it's basically a PictureBox with 3 images, and I can load those images as I want when I'm running my simulator. And this is just one of many, many, many ways you can use PictureBoxes and update them in real time or whatever you want to add some really good visual effects in your user interface. So let's take a look at how we can use a PictureBox like this. So here we are with a brand new blank C# Windows Forms.NET framework solution. And you can see I've got the default Form 1 user interface. And if I want to add a PictureBox, all I have to do is go to Toolbox and scroll down to PictureBox. Drag and drop it onto the form, and there you go, you've got a PictureBox. You can resize it however you want. Now, either you're going to have an existing image or you're going to put this on your form and size it appropriately and then make an image to match that size. So you got to figure out how you want to do this. But if you get this PictureBox sized correctly for what you want on your user interface, you can go down here to the properties and find out that the size that you've set is on the bottom right here, 241 by 171. Or you can change that, whatever is appropriate. Once you've got the size correctly, keep those in mind, those dimensions. Or like I say, if you've got an existing image, you know the size, you can set this appropriately. Now you've got your PictureBox. The next thing you have to do is figure out what are the images that are going to be brought into this PictureBox. And again, you can have multiple images, but you have to tell Visual Studio what are the images. So there's 2 ways to do that. If you're familiar with the properties down here on the right, you can go to where it says image, and you can see it starts out with no image, says none, and hit the 3 dots. And here you can add whatever image by importing. What I like to do is to import the image into my project. So up here on the right, it will appear under your project. I've got project resource file, and what I need to do is import one or more of the images. And you can see it's bringing it into properties resources.resx. That's important to keep that in mind. So I'm going to go import. So I've selected the folder where my images are, And I'm going to import all three of these because I want to use them all in the PictureBox. So I will select one, open, and you can see it has now added this project resource. Then I can select the next one, and it has added that. And I can select the third one, and now they are all added. Once I hit OK, you can see up here it has added this resources folder, and the three images are now added to my project. So I can adjust the PictureBox size, and now I've got the three images that I can access in my code directly. Now, there's another way to do that. You can go up here, and you see there's a little right arrow up here. You can click on that, and it says choose image, and it brings you to the exact same place. So there's a couple of ways to do it, but basically it gets you all to the same place. So now that we've got our images loaded into our project, if we select the PictureBox and go down here to image, you can see that it is giving us the location of the image that we can access. And it says PictureBoxes Properties, Resources, and then the name of the image. So that's how we're going to access it in our code. It's going to use this PictureBoxes project, then Properties, and then Resources. You can see it's the Resources folder, and then the name of the image. So that's how we're going to access that in our code, by using that path. Now, one thing to be aware of, you don't necessarily need to have a certain image format. If you're familiar with images, there's all different types of formats. There's JPEG, there's BMP, there's PNG, and the different formats give you different functionality. And it doesn't have to be one format. You can have, for example, this image that I've loaded, these images are PNG, which means you can have transparencies in the image. And as you see here, you are showing just these two lights, but the rest of the image is transparent, so it shows whatever background you've got in your form. So I can prove that. I'll select the form and go to the back color and select active caption, and you can see it is transparent, so it takes on whatever color outside of the lights that is in the background. Again, JPEG doesn't give you that functionality, but you can choose the right file format based on what you need. Now, one thing I want to mention is really, really important. You've got under resources, you've got these three images you've loaded. Now, let's say that you've modified these images, or you want to add different images, and you want to get rid of some of these. Be very, very careful. You might think that you should just go in and click on an image and right-click and delete. I strongly recommend against doing that because you're going to get into a lot of trouble. There's a much better way to do that. And the way you'll do that is you'll go up to your project. In this case, it's called PictureBoxes. Right-click and then choose Properties. And you can see over here, you've got this selection called Resources. And here it shows all of the images in that Resources folder. To remove one, you right-click on it and go to Remove. And that not only removes it from the resources, but it removes the resx code behind it. And if you don't do that, you're going to get into a whole bunch of errors. So I encourage you to do it the correct way. Go into Project Resources and delete them. Now, another really important feature of these PictureBoxes is how you can adjust them and how the image responds as you adjust the PictureBox size. And if you go down here to the properties of the PictureBox, you can see under Size Mode, and it starts out as normal. So what does normal do? Well, normal keeps the image the way it was when it was loaded as you adjust the PictureBox, and it will crop it, and it will be of, honestly, I find it to be of little use. There's other ways to do it. You can select Stretch Image, which means as you increase the size of the PictureBox, it will respond appropriately. Another option is to center the image, which means it will always keep the image in the center of the PictureBox. And auto size means that I believe it means the PictureBox will auto size to the size of the image. So you can play around with those things, but it's really important to keep in mind you've got those options. Now, another important aspect of any controls in Visual Studio is the events. If I double click on this, I will get a PictureBox 1, which is the name of the PictureBox, click event. So what can I do with that? Well, you can see I've got two lights here. For example, I could, when I click on this PictureBox, it will give me this event, and then I can, for example, determine what is the XY location of the mouse cursor when I click to tell me, is it in this circle or is it in this circle? So that's just one example, but you can use, there's many events, hovering events like any control. So I encourage you to take a look at that. But it's another way to, for example, if you wanted to make these into buttons, you could click the buttons and then determine which button is clicked in your picture box by what the XY location of the cursor is. So now another important question is, where can I get these images? If I want images on my picture box, where do the images come from? Well, there's many choices. So for example, there are applications like Photoshop, which costs money. Here I've got Affinity Photo, which I tend to use. It's got some functionality that I like to use. There's also GIMP, which is another free application for generating and editing images. You can see here I've got what are called layers. If you're familiar with image editing, you will be familiar with layers. I can do videos on that if anybody's interested. And you can see I've got 3 layers. Each layer shows an individual image. This is with both lights off. And here's with one light on, and here's with the other light on. And I can save these layers individually. And these I basically generated from scratch, and I put transparency. And again, you can do this in Photoshop, you can do it in GIMP or Affinity. Also, you can do some of that image editing inside Visual Studio. And we've talked about that before in other videos, but I can go to one of my images, double click on it, and up comes a image editing software inside Visual Studio. It doesn't have all the functionality you might need, but it may be perfect for what you need. And it's free and it's right there. So again, another option, it's got all of the brushes and selection tools and text and circles and squares. One nice thing here is it has lines and squares and circles, which some of the other software might not have. So, you know, based on what you need. But that's just one other option. You can do it internally if it meets your needs. So that's it for this one. If you like any of these videos, please hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notifications. And most of all, please let others know that we're here so we get some views. Really appreciate it. Otherwise, take care. Have a really good day. Thanks.